Welcome to another Coffee with Samso, where we speak with ASX companies about the stories and the guys who are sort of running the companies, sharing their thoughts and where things are going. We're here at the UWA Club in Crawley at the University of Western Australia. And today we're here with James Hill from Singulare Health, whose code is SHG. James is the Chief Operating Officer. James is new to Coffee with Samso, but Singulare Health is not. Look, James, welcome.
Thank you very much.
James, look, you guys have been a newly listed IPO beginning of this year, I believe, January, I think.
That's correct. We did our IPO during January, and we actually had the IPO date on the 12th of Feb of this year.
Yep. Look, James, things have moved on. We had a Coffee Samso sort of introducing, I think this was done pre-IPO, but down the road, things have moved. So give us an update of what's been happening.
Yeah, they've sure moved. I mean, Coffee with Sam's, I think, was like December last year, pre-IPO. Since then, it's just been a crazy year. I'm sure it's been a crazy year for everyone, but it seems like the whole year's flown by since we listed back in February. We've seen the company kind of go from strength to strength. We moved office. We've, grown out the team. But most importantly, we've kind of taken the opportunity to really refine the direction that the company's going in. So still in line with everything that we said in the prospectus in terms of the areas that we're focusing on. But we've refined the kind of go-to-market strategy and how we plan on scaling the company once the borders open and once we can actually start to travel and market the company heavily again. So it's really been a period of kind of setting foundations and really building out the technology so that we can scale it en masse globally while still leveraging all of the great virtual reality technology that we have and the access to surgeons and various areas.
Just so an update viewers, I guess, Singulare Health, you came onto the market as, correct me if I'm wrong, the summation, a virtual reality software that will help people view their scans and things like that. And like everything else, I mean, you're not special in the sense that you're refining your business as everybody does. Which is what you were saying before. So now you've gone to, I see from your announcements, you wouldn't say a big change. I think it's a vertical integration kind of process, right? Can you sort of run us through that?
Yeah, so what we did was kind of at the time of the prospectus last year, we were already in the midst of making these changes. So as you rightly pointed out, we went to the market with what we called MedVR. So this was a piece of software conceptualized locally in 2017 and brought to fruition, through Singulare Health. And effectively, when you have a CT or an MRI or a PET scan, so these kind of common radiological images, it creates a 3D view. So these are all captured in 2D planes, so individual slices that go through, and it would create a 3D model. You could then put a virtual reality headset on and walk around inside the model. Now, before we went to market, we were already in the midst of changing this because with COVID coming about, what we were doing with the VR is we were using like a wired headset. So it had to connect to a gaming computer and you'd put this wired headset on and you'd get this great, immersive view. You'd basically be walking through the patient, looking inside their lungs, and you can travel down the airways and get this massive impression, this brilliant impression of patient-specific anatomy. But given that it was hardware and it was wired, the logistical challenges posed by COVID, but also just posed by scaling it, the capital expenditure required by customers, we really wanted to get that down. And so COVID was the catalyst, but it wasn't the kind of primary driver. So to scale the business, we realized that we really wanted to move it to a software-only application. So just prior to the prospectus, we were all kind of working on bringing this crossover onto desktop. and moving it on to things like this, a standalone virtual reality headset. So this here, no wires, but and brilliant hardware, but you still require the software to be optimized such that it can work on this. And now, with the whole advent of the metaverse, there is vertical integration possible there. But what we did once we moved it to a desktop version is you can go onto the internet and you can literally download the software. So we're still waiting on regulatory approvals, but as a scientific and research tool at the moment, you can download the software from anywhere in the world. And this allows us to use Google Ads. It allows us to change it to a kind of direct to practitioner and direct to customer marketing model. But it also allowed us to do really interesting things. So start to bring in artificial intelligence, start to bring in what we call virtual surgical planning, which operates on this Quest 2, and then vertically integrate that all the way through into 3D printing. And there were a couple of kind of key transactions that happened just after the IPO, which really accelerated that scan to surgery process that we've coined.
So that's advanced version of version 1. Is that basically...
Correct. It's taken MedVR and made it completely wireless. Yep. These can be bought off of Amazon for like $490, $500. And Amazon's worldwide. The software can be downloaded anywhere around the world. Yep. It makes this instantly scalable. You can, the surgeons themselves, provided there's regulatory approval in that area, say Europe, with the MDR regulations, or the US with FDA, we can get them to order the headset themselves. It's an off-the-shelf piece of hardware, and then they just download our software and they've got patient-specific models available in virtual reality.
So it's really targeting for the surgeons to use initially or purposely?
Yeah, so to put in kind of perspective and the direction the company's taking is that we're focusing on both surgical applications and also patient education as well. So there's kind of two areas that the company focuses on. With the patient engagement, we've gone down the path of, along with optimizing it for the virtual reality headset, we've now optimized it for smartphones. So all of the rendering, the MedVR rendering platform that we had, the volumetric rendering platform, it works on a smartphone. And that allows you to, pull up the mobile app, get your own patient images and actually view it in 3D and turn it around. So that's great for the patient. There's very limited functionality there because you don't want to overwhelm the patient or give them access to surgical tools when they need to be used by a trained practitioner. Scan to surgery is a really interesting area in terms of the surgical applications. So where we're targeting surgeons, it's really in the process of advanced surgical procedures. So you're not going to use our software to, treat tonsillitis, where you can easily see it with existing hardware and it's a really standard procedure. Where you've got, cranial implants, where you've got, hip replacements, shoulder replacements, spinal surgery, all of that complex surgery that varies from patient to patient and requires you to actually, open up the patient to do it. That's where we really come to the fore. And scan to surgery doesn't just allow for the visualization of the patient, but it actually allows for patient-specific implants to be created, artificial intelligence to kind of triage or bring to the attention of the radiologist or the practitioner what the issue is, or do things like segmentation. So the sequence of scan to surgery is that a scan is taken, a CT, an MRI or a PET scan is taken of the patient. It's then transferred from the scanning device, which is just standard hardware, existing hardware. There's no required changes to the scanners in the hospital or the radiological clinic. It then goes into what's called a PACS system, so picture archiving and communication system. This stores the images. So this is existing hardware that we're going to leverage. existing infrastructure. So the practitioner, the surgeon, can then retrieve the images from that storage space, and they can view the scan in 3D or virtual reality using our 3DICOM software. In the 3DICOM surgical version of the software, we'll be implementing or integrating some artificial intelligence models. And that will do things like our Kickstart 1 program with CSIRO. It'll actually extract all of the vertebrae automatically, something that would take like 4 hours to do manually. It's going through finding all of the vertebrae and actually creating computer-aided design files.
So this is your IP, right?
Yeah, this is the IP. Like, we've developed this entire platform that can integrate these AI models. And then once you've used the AI model to accelerate the process, it then goes into virtual surgical planning. So when you've converted a radiological image into a computer-aided design file, you can put this virtual reality headset on, or you can use our desktop software, and you can actually manipulate the anatomy. So you've got the base anatomy of the patient here, but if they wanted to cut the maxilla here and move it forward, they can do that, or they will be able to do that in our software, to cut through the anatomy there and say, I want to move this forward 4 millimeters. And this is, pre-surgical planning. You don't even have to cut the patient forward. You're using a digital twin of the patient's anatomy, planning your surgery there, making all of the movements. And then once you've done that in what we call virtual surgical planning, you can then export it to a 3D printer. And for this reason, we've made an investment in a 3D print facility in Melbourne, which was announced in March of this year, and kind of ratified in a EGM in May. And that will 3D print not just the biomodels, not just the manipulated patient anatomy in its kind of before and after modes, but it will also generate the cutting guides and the drill guides that go in to show the surgeon where to move it forward, and even the implants that will then hold it in its final position. So it's all about patient-specific implants. It's all about patient-specific medicine that is tailored to the patient's own anatomy. And so this process, it's a complete vertical integration. We always display it in a horizontal flow because it's kind of a workflow that goes through a sequence of events. But it's very much a vertical integration, because the output of the 3D scan feeds into the AI. The AI feeds into the virtual surgical planning, which again we acquired earlier this year, some software that we've been integrating into our 3DICOM software. And then when you then have that VSP and you can export to 3D print, we've made that investment so that we're also capturing the value when we're printing these biomodels. Located in Melbourne, that 3D print facility called Australian Additive Engineering, or AAE, that will make turnaround times a lot quicker. It will provide local manufacturing, or sovereign capability here in Australia, which means that we can reduce our reliance on offshore manufacturing of 3D printed patient components. And it also just makes the turnaround time a lot faster. You're making it in Melbourne, you're shipping it to Sydney, you're not making it in Belgium or Israel or South Korea and shipping it to Sydney.
What stage are you guys at? Because I'm sitting here listening, you think, precision and all this, and being not from the medical field, I'm thinking, okay, how precise are you, right? I mean, I didn't want it to be up by a mil, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, how do we visualize or understand precision in that sense?
Yeah. So that's what we have in the virtual surgical planning. So when you're making this manipulation, it is going down to, tenths of millimeters, etc. Obviously, all of this has to be validated by a surgeon, and our software still, before we can commercialize the kind of virtual surgical planning aspect of it, for everyday use rather than like research use, that will require regulatory approval. So the the big focus in the company at the moment is on regulatory approvals. But really, there's not much point spending a lot of money in the company on getting regulatory approvals if you haven't, got your software, 90% of the way there. So we've made a big investment in the software this year, in creating all of this these foundational aspects, and getting the workflows right, and the mobile, optimization so it works standalone, correct? And now it's moving towards this regulatory path, and that's not something that ever kind of changes. In the medical space. It's just part and parcel of being involved in the medical industry, is that you have to, have everything regulated. It hasn't stopped us from commercializing the technology, both the core technology and some of our spin-offs or derivatives of this volumetric rendering platform. So we're still able to commercialize it as a research and scientific tool. We, run a lot of disclaimers in the software as well, letting people know that they can't, at the moment use it for medical purposes or preoperative planning. But it's certainly the space that we're moving into, and the software now is, it is capable of, segmenting out the patient's anatomy, converting it into a 3D print file like this, and then actually 3D printing it. And this is about a 75% scale skull. Using some advanced algorithms and AI, we've been able to extract this skull from the actual patient's anatomy in about 5 minutes. Okay. So it's really about accelerating these patient-specific implants. There's a massive market available, but in the interim, we have been starting to commercialize the technology, and that's also come about in kind of our derivative product, which is the GeoVR technology as well.
So, in the sense, you're effectively at the pilot stage, right? You're sort of proving. Do I take that proof of concepts pass? Now it's more proof of reliability. Would that be a fair comment?
That's correct. I mean, if you want to put it in mining terms, we've proven up the resource.
Yeah.
Now, it's all about doing kind of like the, definitive, the bankable feasibility study. It's proven to be, feasible. We're in a market where you can command really high prices. We're very passionate about making this software accessible. The software has been translated into multiple different languages. And we can add additional languages with quite a lot of ease as well. And the market is huge. There are 1.1 million cranial implant or craniotomies or cranial surgeries per year globally. The US alone does around 650,000 knee replacements a year, 350,000 hip replacements per year. Patient-specific implants is in the cutting guides, patient-specific components. That's accounting for around 5 to 10% of the market at the moment, but it's growing at a really rapid pace. People are seeing the benefits of these patient-specific implants as 3D printing technology, metal 3D printing becomes more commonplace and cheaper. It's also bringing this into the realm of possibility for, less bespoke cases. And we only see it as being a growing market, not just in the US, but globally, where patients specific implants and personalized medicine is really the next, hot sector or trend. And I think we're really well aligned in terms of our development pathway, our regulatory pathway, to time that with, the rise of the metaverse, the rise of these, patient-specific surgeries.
I think software is the key. I think that is your business, right? And I think someone sitting in Australia or Belgium or wherever can actually send that to a 3D printer wherever and have that printed out.
Correct,
That's simple, right?
Yeah.
And I guess regulatory is what awaits you guys. I remember it's like this thing works, but you're just waiting for them to give you those 3 ticks.
Correct.
And then you the world is your oyster. I mean, being patient specific is very important, I think, because no one person is the same, no one injury is the same. It's almost an impossibility to redo an injury, and yeah, I think that the where you sit, the time difference between you scan this thing and being able to print that out is not common thing currently. With that, is that?
That's correct,
Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of the time, it's being taken out of the hands of the surgeon and, handled by multinational companies who, once they've got hold of the scan, they'll get a little bit of input from the surgeon, but they're not really involving the surgeon, or this is the feedback that we've had, they're not really involving the surgeon so much in the preparation of the case. So the surgeon's beholden to fitting their schedule with the multinational, design company to schedule in a design session, go through and actually just ratify the changes, as opposed to being able to kind of do most of the planning themselves, get it checked off by a bioengineer, get it checked off by the 3D printing facility, and then actually proceed. So we're all about reducing that time from the initial scan through to the final surgery, and providing surgeons more input and providing patients a bit more understanding of their case as well, because they can look at the pre and post planned virtual surgical plan. It reduces anxiety in there's been a number of papers that have shown it's reduced anxiety. Doing preoperative planning and involving the patient reduces blood loss. There's less adrenaline, and yeah, it's something that we're very passionate about in the company. I think from the ground up, we really feel passionate about creating this software. And with the regulatory pathway, the good thing about software is that we're getting the software approved. We're not creating a range of medical products that are, that need each of them to have clinical trials or to be, to be approved. We're creating software which can be done, quite, you're getting the software regulated, and then the bespoke surgical implants that come out of it obviously need to comply with a quality management system and be checked, etc. But we're not, applying for every single, 3D print that comes out of it.
I think as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, that not wanting to trivialize the business. It's almost as if like you got an assembly of cars, and they're all cutting the same thing, and they're all cutting to a specific size and shape, and all run by software, right? Effectively, there's a guy sitting in a room, puts the design in, sets the machine go, and bang, 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 he cuts it out.
Yeah.
That's in a nutshell what your software is allowing people to do, right?
That's correct.
Go from existing scanning, converts into a 3D model or 3D shape, allowing visualization. And as you were talking, I'm thinking, taking the Dr. Google out of the picture, whereas people can actually even visualize and lower the anxieties and things like that. So that is the software, isn't it? It is basically that simple.
That's correct. And you don't have to use every single step of the scan to surgery process. For example, when we talk about patient anxiety, you can go through from the scan, the packs, pull the file down, retrieve the file from the hospital's server, show it in 3D, and then you'll be able to share it with the patient with some annotations on there and remove Dr. Google. Because if you can record your session with a patient with a 3D model that the patient understands, because the patients haven't gone to med school, they don't understand these 2D
Sounds
slices.
Like
they have no idea.
Everyone's talking, they're an expert now, right?
Yeah, well, depends on which topic. But yeah, I mean, with the access to Google and the ability for patients to go and look up specific things, it's very easy to fall into that Dr. Google trap. But if you've got a mobile app that shows your body or your anatomy in 3D, it's got little annotations or labels in there. It's got, even maybe potentially a video of your consult with the doctor. You're more likely to go look at that
Yeah.
And then you're relying on the doctor's feedback. You can pull it up at any point in time. I don't know how many times, gone to the doctor or family members gone to the doctor, they come back from their consult and you go, so how'd it go with the doctor? And you get basically a 5-word summary.
Yeah.
And it's missing some of those pertinent points, or, what, the side effects might be, or, why the doctor recommends holding off on a particular treatment. So that's what we're trying to solve with the patient app.
Yeah.
And that really is only, using the scan and the AI components or stages of the scan to surgery process, but you're still getting a huge amount of value out of it. So it's a quite ubiquitous piece of software. Like, it's a platform that can be built on in each of these different steps. And it's something that we're really excited about.
From an investor point of view, obviously, I'm looking at it and this is fantastic. The very first question everyone asks is, what's your competition, right? Where, and also what's your competition, and what is the potential, to mirror somebody who's already in the market.
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. Obviously, we're competing with multinational companies. So there's a number of different DICOM viewers in the market. So DICOM is the kind of standard file type that's exported from CT, MRI, and PET scanners globally. And it's one of the things that's allowed Singulare Health to be who we are today. This standardization of the file means that you don't have to create different software or different protocols every time you go and use a different scanner. We can load up CT scans of people's knees from, Mexico, or an MRI scan of a brain from Melbourne. It doesn't really matter. It all works off this DICOM scan. So there's these things called DICOM viewers that have been around for years. It's basically the standard radiological software. And we've certainly, done our competitive analysis, made sure that we, at least mirror the components that they have in their software, but bring our advanced 3D visualization. So in terms of competitiveness with the DICOM viewer, from a technical perspective, we're now on par, and that's, thanks to our excellent technical team. I mean, they've worked really hard over the last couple of years to really bring the software up to scratch with, companies that have been around for 10, 15 years, as well as doing the 3D and the VR. And in terms of marketing and competition, we ranked number 2 on Google for 3D DICOM viewer. So we've gone through a process of search engine optimization for the DICOM viewer component, for the scan viewing. We work on both Windows and Mac, whereas a lot of the existing competition only works on Mac or Windows. They don't work across both. So the fact that we're cross-platform really has given us an advantage in that space. When you get to the scan to surgery and the AI components and the 3D printing, of course, there's large multinationals out there. Our biggest competitor, I'd say, is probably a company called Materialise. They're listed on the NASDAQ from memory, around about like a $2.6 billion US market cap, global reach. But, I'd like to have a competitor like that and, comparison like that. And they're really, there's almost like a bit of a playbook that you can leverage. But we're not a Me Too product. We don't want to just copy what they've done. We want to bring out, we want to lead the pack in terms of the virtual reality. And I think, moving to these standalone VR headsets, putting the power back into the hands of the surgeons as well, and having almost a globalization mixed with localization, in that our software is globally accessible, but the manufacture can be localized. So you can have a surgeon in Lyon in France who downloads our software with the correct approvals, etc. Will be able to go through and segment the patient's anatomy, do their preoperative planning, and get it 3D printed in Italy or get it printed in France, not all the way over in Melbourne, Australia. So it's a global software application with the ability to leverage local infrastructure. And the 3D printing bureaus, as a distribution or go-to-market strategy actually can act as distributors or resellers for us, because it will lend to more work for them as well. So it is a competitive space. We have large competitors, but I think what we've done on the budget that we have and the strides we've made to not just catch up but surpass some of these companies in different areas, I think it's I'm pretty competitive, and I think that we're kind of midfield at the moment, but making good strides to get to the front of the pack.
I also noticed a while ago, I think it may be in the last quarter, you made an announcement of relationship with Osteopore.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, so, I mean, we, in terms of developing our IP and where we take the company, it's not all about doing it in-house. You know, there are places where there's natural fits or the ability to partner and collaborate with various organisations and other ASX-listed companies. Osteopore is one of those companies, and it really is coming off the back of a CSIRO Kickstart grant. So we did the CSIRO Kickstart 1 project. We were able to work with CSIRO's Data 61 team to segment the spine. So every single vertebrae can be segmented out of a CT scan. Identify it, tells you which vertebrae it is. It then gives you the height. It extracts it using an AI model in only a couple of minutes with 95.2% accuracy or thereabouts. And so as we looked into doing our second Kickstart 2 project with CSIRO, we were really looking at, a fit that would allow us to improve our software, integrate another AI model, but also collaborate with another company. And so we identified cranial implants as a really interesting fit. And of course, there's almost no one better than Osteopore in terms of the cranial implant space. They're bioresorbable lattice, so they actually 3D print a lattice that allows the bone to regrow back into that space. And then once the bone's regrown into the space, the lattice pretty much dissolves into the bone. So you're not putting a titanium implant into somebody's head, you're putting this soft lattice to begin with. The bone regrows over a period of months or years, and then you're left with natural bone back in its place. So it's really cutting edge stuff. And where we see ourselves fitting in with the Kickstart 2 and why we're collaborating with Osteopore is that we're providing the software and the AI model that the AI model will be integrated into, and you'll be able to have a CT scan of a traumatic head injury. So somebody falls off their bike or crashes their motorbike, and a part of their skull has to be removed to reduce pressure on the brain, and that part obviously needs to be replaced. And as I said earlier, there's 1.1 million cranial surgeries done per year, so a massive market. When you do the CT scan of the preoperative plan, you can effectively cut out the area that needs to be removed or the area that's now missing, and the AI model will actually automatically design a new cranial implant. That will then be verified by the surgeon, and then it can be 3D printed using Osteopore's 3D printed biolattice and implanted into the patient. And it's, again, all about accelerating that process so that from the scan to when they do the surgery can be a matter of, hours rather than a matter of days.
So just with that example alone, I'm just I thought I had an idea of what you guys, the business model, but so they're using your AI, is that correct?
They will. So we've entered into this agreement to work together through the CSIRO Kickstart 2.
Okay.
It's roughly, I believe, about a 9-month process, project, whereby we've procured the training data set for CSIRO, but Osteopore will be working with us on providing some real life examples of craniotomies, where they've removed part of the cranium, for this AI model to be tested on and then once we have the results from CSIRO, if they're positive, which
they will,
we hope they are, and they did a brilliant job in the first project. We will then look to integrate that into our software, and then Osteopore and Singulare Health will most likely, or the intention is for us to participate in a trial of the software in an actual clinical environment after the project comes to a close.
So the software we're talking about, your software, your AI, your technology, is not common thing out in the market space.
No, there's many different disparate softwares for doing particular, clinical designs or, orthognathic surgery or replacement of ribs, etc. But there's not really a, standardized piece of software or platform that enables, surgeons from different specialties to kind of plan these patient-specific surgeries.
I asked that question because I'm sitting here thinking, well, that's a fairly simple process, what you described. I understand that it's very complicated, but the process, and I'm thinking, oh, so they must, the software that you have, it must not be out there commonly.
It's kind of manually designed at the moment, but
okay. Whereas yours would be sort of automated in a sense.
Or semi-automated. It's about accelerating these manual processes.
Okay.
So obviously we've got a growing population, a aging population, more and more surgeries per year, and if you can optimize and accelerate these surgical planning processes with our software, and then just have the verification at the end and the surgical plan and everything created, it's about improving the efficiency in the hospital and private clinic.
Okay. We talked about competitors. We talked about your sort of potentials and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm keen to see, to get your thoughts on where do you see this market going, because I'm thinking that everything is patient specific in some sense, and if we can make the process more efficient, somewhere along the line the cost is going to be, well, the cost of doing the whole process in the old ways would have been XYZ dollars.
Yep.
And because it's more efficient, per item may be the same price, but the actual total cost for the patient would be lower because time less spent, etc., etc.
Yep.
What is my narrative is that. So what, in your opinion, obviously you guys are industry, how far am I off the mark or am I on the mark?
No, I mean, you're completely on the mark. So there's been studies done in the US that have looked at off-the-shelf components in patients as opposed to patient-specific implants. At present, the actual surgery with a patient-specific implant is a bit more expensive because, of course, you're printing these biomodels, you're printing titanium cutting guides and titanium implants and extra components that they don't really use at the moment. So you've got guided surgery and you've got patient-specific component surgery. Guided surgery uses typically off-the-shelf components, and patient-specific surgery has the cutting guides and the drill guides, etc. However, in the 12 to 18 months after the surgery, when you look at the costs of total recovery time, rehabilitation, the time spent in hospital, etc., it's been shown in limited studies that patient-specific implants actually have a cheaper overall. And I think, as I said earlier, with 3D printing becoming more prevalent and cheaper, I think we are going to see the cost of those additional components come down. Where I see the market going is a process of consolidation. So with a few changes to the FDA regulations and the European Medical Device Registration regulations, the market is now starting to favour companies that are a little bit bigger, but it will also lead to a roll-up of all of those smaller companies. So I think there'll be a really interesting period of consolidation in the market, and a period of consolidation that we'd like to, take part in, and that will be a emerging trend over the next couple of years. I think we'll see a lot of smaller companies be acquired by the larger companies, and that works in both ways for us. Looking at potential M&A activity.
I mean, that's not new, right? Microsoft was a master of that.
Yeah.
And our friend Facebook is a master of that, and Mr. Google as well.
Well, Facebook managed to pick up Oculus as well to roll into their metaverse. So, it'll be a really interesting
I think so. I think
ahead.
It's a very exciting time. I mean, it's how we lead to efficiency.
Yeah.
It's this kind of stuff. But look, James, it's a definitely very different. Well, in some ways it's different. In some ways it's not. From where we had the first conversation in December last year.
It's an evolution.
It's an evolution, and in some parts the major what we just discussed is still the same. It's just in a different form, right? You still need to visualize in 3D, and I think that is still a major component. Without that part,
correct, yeah,
you can't do the rest, right?
Yeah.
But look, James, thank you for your time. As I always say, any last words for guys? Any special Samso hints for investors out there?
It's an exciting time ahead for the software and for the company as a whole. I think we're in a really exciting market sector, a growing market sector. The kind of macro trends are there. The team is really solid at the moment, and we've got the GeoVR product as well that was mentioned in the prospectus, which is progressing well, and also our other products such as the virtual anatomy product as well, which continues to progress. So multiple different avenues that we're going down, and really exciting times ahead. So thanks for having us, Noel.
Yeah. No, look, I like the story. I think it's a good kind of product that's slightly different to what's out there in the world. And you're in the medical field, but you're not sort of biotech, but still on the IT, medical IT, I guess you could just call it yourself. But James, thank you, and I hope we can continue the journey to get in on the story. But again, thank you for
look
coming.
forward to another interview soon.